This is an article summary of the second of 4 articles in the MobileFirst Indexing or a Whole New Google series, which was a series created in early 2018. We have other series about MobileFirst Indexing, but this was the first one. So this article is called MobileFirst Indexing or a Whole New Google, How Media and PWAs Fit into the Larger Picture at Google. And it's the second of 4. In this article, we start by talking about how mobile-first indexing does not mean mobile-only indexing, and how Google's Search Liaison, Danny Sullivan, made a relationship between mobile-first indexing and changing analog flat paper books to digital ebooks, and we interpreted that and gave our own feedback on what that means. But essentially what Danny wanted everyone to know is that there are not 2 separate indexes for mobile-first indexing, that it's one index, but things are being changed within the index into how Google understands and finds them. And that's not an exact quote from Danny. But the library analogy is from Danny, and I link over to the tweets where he talked about it. So in our interpretation, we like to redefine mobile-first indexing as entity-first indexing, or if you parse out the different words in mobile-first indexing, we take mobile to mean portable or cross-device, not just mobile phones. First, we take just to mean prioritized, not only. And indexing is the way Google organizes their information. So portable, prioritized organization of information is how we reinterpret this mobile-first indexing concept. So again, it's important that it's mobile first, not mobile only. Desktop content will still be indexed, but we believe that Google is going to use mobile-first indexing partially to help surface the right content for the particular user experience that they need based on the device that they're on. So if they're on a screen-free device, Google's not going to try and rank videos, for instance. And so in this article, we first talk about PWAs, and we talk about why PWAs are important for mobile-first indexing. So Google has put a lot of emphasis on PWAs recently, and we think it's because PWAs get things like native apps closer to being cross-device, because since PWAs live on the web, they are not from a specific app store, and they don't have to run on a specific operating system. So it gets content that's historically been locked in one operating system and one app store out into a more cross-device OS agnostic world where Google wants to be, because Google wants to be able to cast things that are potentially on an iOS phone to a non-iOS TV, or to have Apple apps work well with Android Auto, or with things that aren't necessarily all within one operating system group. And historically, Google has been pretty good about making their stuff interoperable, but Apple has always tried to have a really limited kind of closed circuit where to make the content work from one device to another, you have to have all Apple devices. And Google's trying to avoid that, and PWAs help them get there. The problem with PWAs, at least in the old way of Google's functionality, is that PWAs don't need to have separate URLs to function. They can have one URL and be built as a single page app style website or PWA, where you have one URL and then all of the interactivity is controlled by JavaScript and information from the server on that one page. And so that was hard for Google to index. But now with mobile-first indexing and deferred JavaScript rendering, we believe that Google can index all of a single-page app and find the different information even deep within the app, despite it not having specific URLs during the crawl. We suspect that part of this happens because Google is using dynamic links and giving things that don't have URLs, dynamic links. So dynamic links are something that Google came up with years ago to allow a piece of content that lives on the web and in an iOS app and a native app to be accessed with just one link. And that link acts as a disambiguation engine to say, okay, I can see that an iOS device clicked this link. Let's look, does the iOS have the native app? No, it doesn't, so we have to fall back to web. And then if it's on an Android device, it'll say, I can see it's on an Android device. Does this Android device have the app? Yes, it does. And then it goes to the deep link in the app. And it can go to deep links in iOS devices, or if the app is just not present, then it defaults to web. And so this dynamic link becomes a disambiguation engine. And so we think Google is using these dynamic links also to find and locate content in web experiences that don't necessarily have URLs. And we also suspect that Google was, for a while, promoting something called instant apps. And we think instant apps were a way of Google basically taking a database and putting dynamic links into the database and then wrapping a shell around it. So when you have a database, you make an app shell, you automatically have an instant app. They've backed off of instant apps, but we may see a resurgence of those. But again, this mobile first indexing really does seem, at least to us, to be about Google being able to index more than just web content, sometimes potentially by putting dynamic links onto content that doesn't have specific URLs. We also see this happening with knowledge graph. If you look at a knowledge graph result in your search landing page, a lot of the knowledge graph results now have the triangular share link. And this share link includes a dynamic, what we think is a dynamic link so that you can share the knowledge graph with someone else, or share it in Slack, share it as a text message. And it looks like a web link on a Google shortened URL, but it allows you to link to content that doesn't necessarily have a web page other than just showing up in the search result. When you share the share link, you're not just sharing a copy of the whole search result. It doesn't show the particular query that you searched for with all the other results. It just shares that piece of the knowledge graph. So again, we think with entity first indexing, you can say they don't need URLs. Google still might organize things with URLs or dynamic links, but if you don't have a URL, you don't need it because Google will basically give you one in this context. So this is important from a media perspective because PWAs are a great way to help Google get a stronger foothold in the media game. So far, with cable cutting, in 2017, when this article was written, or just before this article was written, we saw a huge increase in the amount of consumption of cloud-hosted media. So the music, movies, anything that's being streamed from the cloud. And, this happens at least in the US because a lot of the carriers made music streaming free. Some have video packages where video packaging, streaming over even the cable connection without Wi-Fi can be cheaper free. And also just the trend with cable cutters and on-demand content, people are looking for media, searching for media, consuming media differently. And so Google wants to make sure that they have a foothold in that space because right now there's a lot of strong competition coming from Apple, especially with music, but also videos, coming from Amazon with videos and music, coming from Hulu and Netflix. And so Google wants to make sure that you're not the user going somewhere else to search for media. And so by pushing this PWAs and pushing mobile first indexing, they see the potential to really secure their space there. What's interesting is right now, a lot of the content that's indexed in Google Play Music or Google Play TV, Google Play Movies is also available in other outlets owned by Google. So for instance, movies and TV are the same catalog of inventory is also in YouTube. And we believe that Google may be doing this to make it easier for iOS users to find and consume the same content without them feeling like they're switching to an Android environment, because obviously there's some brand loyalty and iOS users don't feel as much like YouTube is a Google property, but they do feel like Android is a totally different world. So having the same inventory both places may be strategic design by Google. So it's yet to see how that'll sort out and if they'll consolidate, but that is something that's happening a lot. The other interesting thing is that voice search is getting much more common for media consumption. And it's not necessarily just with Google. A lot of set-top box cable providers are now giving out remotes, TV remotes that are voice enabled. And they have pretty smart search indexing as well, because you can click the remote and search for a topic or a specific TV show. So you can say, play the news, and it'll show you what news options are on right now. Or you can say, I want to watch football, and it'll show you the football games. Or you can say, play the Broncos Patriots game, if it's on right then. Or you can say, I want to see documentaries, or I want to see a documentary about history, and a lot of the set-top boxes are already surfacing media content that way. So Google sees this as like, people are already being trained to search and consume media this way. We can get into that game and potentially do it better. And then once you're consuming media, you can get more information about the media. So if you're watching a movie, Google has the knowledge graph, so it can show you the actors in the movie, information about locations in the movie, stuff like that. So Google sees a huge opportunity to do a better job of providing voice-controlled media search, potentially using PWAs with MobileFirst indexing of streams of content that doesn't necessarily have a URL. So that is a summary of MobileFirst indexing, or a whole new Google, how media and PWAs fit into the larger picture of Google. This is the second of a 4-part series, and I hope you enjoyed it.